Очень мало народу, мадам.
Погоди.
Очень, беспонтовая музыка. На самом деле, очень плохая музыка.
А зачем вы пришли сюда?
Я думал, намного лучше будет это все. И очень плохая музыка, просто очень плохая музыка. Я думал, намного лучше это все будет. Сколько раз сюда ходил, было намного лучше. Ну и на этот раз как-то не удалось. Во-первых, народу мало, музыка не очень.
А что за направление?
А?
Что за направление?
Направление? Какое направление?
Что за направление музыки играет там?
Gamer Legion take their best of 3 and they'll be joining all their other brothers from Germany, as Penguin just said on the cast for the main event. It is Gamer Legion that won, but let's be fair, it wasn't the most clean series I've seen of this highly anticipated, well, team to go to that main event. Well,
yeah, Gamer Legion had a very slow early game, getting punished a lot by Interpret Fox Gaming. Interpret Fox Gaming actually had a very good early game. Upon and Punisher double teamed up against these mid laners, and Knight wasn't really in the game for the first 20 minutes, and showing that, yes, this early game from Gamers Legion actually can get punished, and props to Interpret Fox Gaming to actually punish them in the early game. But
yeah, I mean, pleasantly surprised, yeah, to my, sorry, I go straight through you, but pleasantly surprised by Interpret Fox Gaming. And I mean, we could talk about that series for hours, but I think our eyes are more focused now on Sector 1 versus Defusekids. It is the Benelux derby that no one asked for. Joining us on the desk is Xsodus. Yeah, Defusekids and Sector 1. I mean, the chances that it would happen would have been really really low, I need to say. Mostly because of the fact that in Group C, there were Mad Lions as well.
I don't think if you ask anybody that, hey, Defusekids and Sector 1 are going to meet each other in a knockout stage where the winner gets to the main event, and they would have said, yeah, sure, that's not going to happen. It actually did happen. And so many factors needed to align, like the stars needed to align for this to make it come true, but it actually did, and I do kind of feel blessed.
Yeah, we'll have to see who is going to be the best region inside of the Benelux. I mean, because we are in the 2 region. Let's have a quick look at the rosters for starting off with the Defusekids. Defusekids have seen an immense growth, and mainly the players that we haven't spoken too much about. I mean, we talk a lot about Goose, we talk a lot about Alois, but we've spoken about Nightmares, about that mid-jungle duo. I think the eyes are on those two. That's going to be very interesting, especially versus Sector 1, who mainly rely on that early game mid-jungle synergy, Woong. Chapapi and Hadess, I don't know how to feel about this matchup, because in my eyes, Dibu and Knight look like the stronger duo here.
I think in this matchup, this is the biggest mismatch, is the 2v2 from Sector 1 in the mid lane and jungle that is just that bit better. And you see Dibu with these early game junglers actually punishing other junglers, and Hadess got punished in the groups before. In his early game, he got some Drakes, but he wasn't really active in the early game ganking, and that's where Dibu and Knight actually shine. They can team up and they can punish a laner like Chapapi when he doesn't get the fallback support from his jungler here in Hadess. But if you get the Nautilus on Nightmares, he can swing that matchup and he can roam in that mid lane.
Yeah, because it's interesting you start here about Nightmares, because Xsodus, this bot lane for Sector 1, Practice and Saviour, we've said this multiple times in the Belgian League already. Practice is a very young player. I mean, he played for Supermassive in the Turkish League. I think it was the Challenger League back there. But this guy is mechanically really good. But he's also really eager to, I mean, take a tower shot or a 3 or 4 or 5. It doesn't really matter to him.
Or a trash hook, or just flash in to get a kill or a turret plate. Yeah, all of those are definitely true. And what I think, or what I kind of fear, is that Saviour and Practice are these two players who want to be the showmakers, who want to make sure that they get the plays. They always go for the 50-50s, but they're up against Goose and Nightmares. And if Goose can get ahead, Goose is somebody who can also get that parry Gary pants on rather and just go all in him. We did see him carry games with the Yasuo Gragas combo, which can still be flexed towards multiple lanes from the Defusekids. So I'm wondering if they do have something prepared to just say, hey, we're going to shut down Practice and Saviour early on and very hard.
I do want to touch a bit back onto the Knight Debu story, because we've seen Knight and Debu perform. I mean, we've seen Knight perform a lot, but we have seen a little bit of shakiness on Debu's end, mostly on the Elise. His early game usually is pretty good, but when that early game doesn't come out, Sector 1 seems to struggle a lot back there.
Yeah, in the groups, Debu actually got exploited for his early game pathing, and I think that is actually his biggest weakness when he doesn't get any lead in the early game with the Elise, the pick that needs to like search for these dives, search for these good ganks with the cocoon setup and the setup from lanes, but he didn't get anything in these early games, falling back to trade control, and that's not something you want to do as Elise. Sure, it's a nice bonus if you have a good early game, but he just didn't get to play the games with the Elise pick.
Defusekids will be starting on the red side on this in this best of 3, meaning that they will look for the counter pick in the top lane. And don't have really talked about the top lane. I'm hearing from prediction that might not be right. But talking about the red side for Defusekids, what we mainly see, Xsodus, is they use their last pick as a counter pick for top lane.
Yeah. Not only the Defusekids knows that the weakness from Sector 1 might be the top lane. We've seen Phoenix being absolutely bullied in all other games. We've seen him being bullied on Cho'Gath. We've seen him being bullied on Wukong. And it's just, they think he is the weak side from Sector 1. He actually might be, but every time, or almost every time a team tries to do this, the rest of Sector 1 says, okay, just Phoenix, you have a certain duty now, you're sacrificial lamb, or just be utility. We saw him do it on Cho'Gath, where he was just kept getting dove over and over and over again, and he just built defensive and utility items.
Yeah, that Cho'Gath game that was versus We Love Gaming, I believe. Yeah, that was correct. Oh, bless my memory. But the fact, like, he went, I think it was 1-6 or 1-8, but he does come back, though. I mean, it kind of shows that Phoenix is not the tiltable player as he was a few years ago, Woong.
No, he has definitely reformed on that part. We've seen him winning other tournaments as well, having to play this weak side, this tank duty on top. And he gets the Cho'Gath, he gets a more utility-focused play style. But when he got the Wukong, it looked really shaky. It got really exploited by Kick there. And we'll just to look at maybe he gets the Ornn back or another tank top laner, maybe the Cho'Gath, but dies less, and actually play for that weak side. But if you play weak side against Alois can actually, with the counter pick, like, stomp on that matchup, especially with Hadess on a strong jungler. They can look for those dives. They've played like this before. They used to be famous for this top focused playstyle. They won the entire year of 2019. They just won everything playing this, and let's see if it gets exploited.
Yeah, it's good you bring this up because these two teams have a lot of history. I mean, we saw Sector 1 last year taking a lot of second places due to the fact that Defusekids just steamrolled every single match. I mean, that was due to the fact that Castle's still in there, the current coach for Mad Lions in the LEC. I wonder, though, because I want to talk a bit about this pick and ban. We've seen Caitlyn, we've seen Ezreal, we've seen Syndra mainly being banned against Sector 1. I mean, people are very scared for practice, but I think they are even more scared for Knight, Xsodus.
As they should be. We have seen Knight not only perform well in his home region, but we have seen Knight perform extraordinarily well in the EU Masters the last couple of days.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about that champion pool. Xsodus, I'm going to put this in your hands as well, because Knight, the Cassiopeia, I mean, he plays more champions than Chapapi. At least he plays different champions than Chapapi. I mean, we see the Qiyana being picked up a lot in the Belgian league. We see his Rise, of course. That was one of the win conditions yesterday versus We Love Gaming. Knight, his champion pool, and I think the overall champion pool, I kind of feel there's more movability on Sector 1 side.
Yes, I do believe that's the case as well. So especially if you look at Knight, you have him being a monster on Rise. He can be extremely proficient on Qiyana, but then he has a Cassiopeia. He also has the Ziggs, and there are still some other sleeper picks that I know Knight is in his champion pool. So banning out that mid laner, probably not your best option. And if you look at other lanes as well, yes, jungle maybe a bit of a fixed champion pool, but I think top and bot have very broad spectrum there.
Yeah, we're getting close to that pick and ban between Sector 1 and Defusekids. Just as very short on the champion pool on the Defusekids side, I mean, we've seen the flex picks coming in. That's a huge improvement. If you look at the beginning of the Dutch League split, the Defusekids have shown some huge improvements, but still, champion pool-wise, I have my question marks here, Woong.
I think we're mainly looking at Hadess. He hasn't been performing that well yet at the EU Masters here in the playing groups. We'll need to see more of him.
Yeah, and that is very, very short. I don't know what's happening here. I mean, we start talking about the Benelux, and I want to talk Dutch.
Hi.
It's not okay. I think it's time that we go to the caster. We're going to head on over to the caster just to watch our second best of 3 of today. It's going to be Sector 1 taking on the Defusekids.
It's your boys. We're really excited. I don't know if you can notice, but I've been waiting for this for such a long time. It's the Benelux Battle of Bloodbath. Any reference that you were to go for? My name is Moswarm. Next to me, Moswarm Dana, my partner for the entirety of Dutch League. And now we also get to see which of the countries actually is better. And that's something that we don't know.
Yeah, we really don't know, even though that we've been saying that the Dutch League obviously is far superior all season long. We factually haven't seen the teams or the leagues play against each other. We haven't seen any matchup, so it's extra exciting to see the number 1 seed from Belgium and the number 1 seed from the Dutch League play each other in such a high-stakes match.
Because, you know, we tried to kind of figure out if maybe the teams wanted to do that. They were, no, we need to prepare for EU Masters. Well, that prep has worked out. Ironically enough, they're still going to be facing each other here. And we have so much to talk about with these two teams. Unfortunately, we won't have too much time for it. Desk, of course, also covered a lot. And then the two of us, I've had the pleasure of casting both teams. You had the pleasure of casting the Defusekids for the entirety of the Dutch League. So very quickly, what do we expect here from Pick and Ban?
From Pick and Ban, you know that the Defusekids is going to have the drafting plan that they usually have, which means early in draft they want to pick up a strong AD carry for Goose, being something like either the Aphelios, the Senna usually get priority, and if those are banned away, then he could fall back to the Lucian. And then you expect the Defusekids to also use their last pick for a counter pick for Alois in that top lane, as they usually do. For the side of Sector 1, we've seen them have high priority on champions as the Lee Sin, so Dibu can have his very aggressive early game and play around those early dragons and the Rift Heralds. And furthermore, I expect them to actually get a decent matchup for Phoenix in the top lane, because we've seen him struggling in the past couple of matches. I remember a particularly ugly Cho'Gath game versus a Sion matchup. So the Defusekids can obviously see that that might be a place where Sector 1 is vulnerable, and they might want to play some patches there before the Defusekids strikes.
So what we see here is kind of following J Fulben, of course, for those of you who follow Dutch League, ever since the Defusekids started banning that, the win rate has gone up immensely. We also see the Syndra, good flex pick used by Sector 1 and practices as real bend away, which makes a lot of sense. On the other hand, Nautilus bend away for Nightmares here. Basically his most comfortable pick, and then the Yasuo from Goose and Chapapi Zazir. That means we're gonna have two of the most OP AD carries being traded off, with Goose picking up the Senna and Practice picking up the Aphelios.
Yeah, Practice, of course, also very comfortable on that Aphelios, which means that it will be the first pick for Sector 1. And so we're gonna see a trade-off between the Aphelios and the Senna, next to the Senna, because she's a fasting champion, meaning she's gonna go for that support item in the lane. We usually see either the Tahm Kench or the Nautilus. Nautilus is banned, so it's quite usual that they will pick up the Tahm Kench in this first rotation to make sure that Sector 1 can't pull any kooky stuff. And here we see Sector 1 fully going on the gas. They're saying we're going to go full on in the early game, picking up the Elise for Dibu rather than the Lee Sin, and picking up the Qiyana for Knight, one of the assassins that he's renowned and feared for. And this kind of makes me a little bit scared for Chapapi's champion pool, because he's known to play these mages that scale well, but also that he plays mages that are quite immobile and are susceptible and vulnerable to these assassins.
And this is a Sector 1 that we've really seen emerge this season in the Belgian League, because Knight traditionally, as we've seen him thus far, the EU Masters has been an ADK, or has been a mid laner who's excelled at playing more scaling mages, but Qiyana and also in the early, which is Talon, have actually been the recipient of many A-ban. Now, Dibu's Elise, the last time that we saw it, or was already pointed out by the desk as well, didn't really work as planned. Now, Hadess will be able to pick up another early game strong jungler from the Elise in here, and it was mentioned that at least the first gank needs to work out, or you're going to be in a heap of trouble if you fall behind. As we see the set taken away here, so none of that here. I would not be surprised to see an Aatrox ban, but the Camille hints to me that I might want to pick up a tank here for Phoenix.
Yeah, top laners being banned away because neither team has yet locked in a top laner so far. Sector 1 also most likely picking up the Elise rather than the Lee Sin, because you want to have a mixed damage profile when you're putting that early pressure on the mid lane. If you were to pick up the Lee Sin, you have a physical damage jungler and a physical damage mid laner, so that's most likely one of the reasons why we don't see Dibu opting for that Lee Sin, rather goes for our favorite spider in the entirety of League of Legends. Defusekids ending this second banning phase with a Renekton ban. And from Sector 1, I wouldn't be surprised to see another top lane ban as well, which means that we're chipping away at the top laners that usually get played. Aatrox is still available, and as I say it, we cast a curse it, of course, and it gets taken out as well, which means that I'm actually quite curious what we're gonna see Defusekids pick up in that top lane.
Chapapi, yes. Chapapi, yes. Well, this is something we haven't seen in a while. But Chapapi's Akali, when Akali was basically still considered the champion, was notorious for being so incredibly hard to deal with, being in absolute madness. And he is playing against an Aphelios, the champion which will not have a lot of defenses. The Karma shield will help a little, but it's nothing like the Tahm Kench at the other end. And I think we're gonna have a bloodbath here. It doesn't look like the usual passive mid lane that we've seen from Defusekids thus far, and that makes me really excited, because this mid jungle duo is what we talked about beforehand, and that's where I expect to be a lot of blood no matter what. And with these matchups, Lee Sin Akali versus the Qiyana and Elise, that's bound to be bloody, whereas Alois picks up one of his most comfortable picks in the Fiora, which I imagine Phoenix is going to have a good time in the early and mid game, but eventually this is not the type of champion you can ever face in a 1v1.
Yeah, so these are two types of changes from the regular Defusekids draft that we're seeing right here. Firstly, we see Chapapi picking up the Akali rather than the Xerath that he opted to play in the last couple of matches when the Azir was banned, which kind of means that they accept the gauntlet that Sector 1 threw down, and they say, if you want to play an assassin in the mid lane, we'll match that. We'll pick an assassin of our own, and we'll see if Chapapi can, fight in the matchup against Knight. For the last pick in the top lane, I was kind of expecting Alois to pick up the Gangplank here because he has such a good scaling matchup against the Mordekaiser, because you have the oranges to get out of the death realm from Mordekaiser, and you can poke him down with the party spam with Grasp the Undying in the early game. Rather than going for the Gangplank, he goes for the Fiora, which kind of means that we're going to see a classic Defusekids game plan, playing around this split-pushing late-game win condition with a Fiora that eventually no one is going to be able to match. Also means that team fights might become rather awkward because no team has really any solid engage. There's no Malphite Maokai ults to trigger and run into the enemy team. You're kind of pick dependent, which means that we might see some funky skirmishes here and there.
You made me I kind of forgotten about the fact that Alois whipped out a Malphite out of nowhere in I want to say the third game of the best of 5 finals that we had in the Dutch league. None of that here, and I feel like both of these compositions will slot naturally into a 1v1 or into a 1-3-1 composition, which more so than Defusekids, who traditionally, like we said before, put Chapapi on a scaling pick. Now they are going to actually be looking to get a lead in those individual lanes and those solo laners, so they can actually win that. Now, thus far, we've seen that Sector 1's early game, I think, has been stronger, but they've also been inconsistent, because with a similar composition, they've had a rough time. We mentioned the Elise, it just didn't come to fruition, whereas for the Defusekids, I think the bot lane and the top lane, it's mainly that mid lane that really pivots what the Defusekids is trying to do here compared to the matches that we've seen thus far.
Yeah, and the problem for Sector 1 is that they have such a high priority in the early game on those neutral objectives. They want to be the team that picks up first late priority and then uses that to get the neutral objectives in the form of that Rift Herald and in the form of that Dragon. There, however, occurs a problem when Dibu manages to fall behind in the early game. He still wants to go for those objectives. However, when teams that are stronger come to contest you at those objectives, then you end up dropping kills and dropping the objective as well. I see that we've arrived on Summoner's Rift for a very longly anticipated match between the number 1 seed from the Belgian League and the number 1 seed from the Dutch League. It's Sector 1 versus Defusekids here in a best of 3 to decide who will advance to the main event of EU Masters.
I'm so excited, Moswarm. We've been wanting this match, be it unofficially, and it's going to be a bittersweet match no matter what, because of course you are a full-blown Dutch League member. I've had the I want to say luck, but with the rivalry between the leagues, sometimes the awkwardness of having the opportunity to get both the two leagues, and no matter what happens here, a Benelux team is gonna be removed from the tournament. But we also have guaranteed that the Netherlands will, or the Benelux rather, will make it out of the play-in stage. Something that coming into the tournament definitely wasn't set in stone. It was the expectations, it was the hope, but it wasn't a certainty. And now we do have that certainty as dibu will be starting on his blue, whereas Hadess is going to start on the red. Or other way around.
It is quite bittersweet for playing for the entirety of EU Masters play-in so far. So far, it's usually been either the Xerath, Azir, or Orianna in mid lane, who are mages that can farm safely from a distance and who will scale good into the game no matter what happens. This is just simply not the case for an Akali, who has to be an aggressive assassin. You have to clear the way for lane priority, and there's just an entirely different playing pattern. And I think Sector 1 is just trying to poke holes into the gameplay that Defusekids is used to at the moment by forcing them onto champions that have to play in an entirely different way.
We do see here that the shadowing from dibu on bot side and the fact that they have extensive knowledge that Hadess is indeed farming dibu's top side does mean that we see practice and safety do what we've seen them do in the Belgian League so many times, which is get that early prio and start to make waves and start to make a wave through those tower plates. Regardless of that, even though almost 2 plates have been taken, we don't see a big gold lead coming through here as of yet for Sector 1. Courtesy of Hadess, who has been out farming dibu. So it's a bit of a trade-off there, as we do see a constant back and forth through in the mid lane as well. No first ganks really successful. Hadess, though, hovering around top, but Phoenix, at least it's not looking like the Cho'Gath game thus far. And I think that's something that everyone in Belgium is going to be very happy with.
And he has opted for a very safe start, went for that cloth armor level 1 rather than a Doran's item, pretty much saying, I expect Alois to want to trade with me in the early game, and I just want to have enough health potions to sustain through these early fights, make it to level 6 or make it to first back, be able to pick up the item, possibly something like, well, an arm guard could be possible, a ninja Tybis would be fine as well, and from that point onward he would be safe in that lane. dibu, however, making his way over towards this top lane. Wave is pushed entirely towards the turret of Alois, which means that they have to either go for a turret dive or dibu would have to waste some time waiting to see if a gank opportunity comes around. Decides to not do either of those things, walk back towards the topside river, clearing a ward on his way there, and he'll be on his way towards his jungle, back to clearing camps.
No, Akali not in the strongest place at the moment. We have seen it pick every now and then to varying success. Of course, it's still, of course, a strong assassin, but the dominance that she used to have, not as applicable anymore. We do see that Knight, despite the nerfs, is gone for the Mobies first here on this Qiyana, something we've seen do a lot back when they were 100 gold cheaper. But even as one is looking to find the early game snowball, and I wouldn't be surprised if an dive on DK's bot lane is going to be imminent at some point in time if they can get prio. Chapapi now teleporting back to mid lane so he can do with the wave as he pleases.
Pretty much means that Sector 1 wants to up the tempo in this early game because they might get outskilled or they might fear Alois' Fiora in the late game. Picking up the mobility boots on the Qiyana pretty much means that you won't have as much trading power in the lane, especially now that Chapapi has picked up the arm guard, but it does mean that you get to the side lanes way quicker, and Chapapi is going to have a harder time following up on the ganks, especially now that his teleport is down as well. Hadess gets caught here by dibu, manages to dash away from the cocoon, does have to use the pink ward for it though, so still a small win for Sector 1 there.
Also pick up the Scuttle Crab. It's not a huge win. You'll take it as dibu is actually kind of far behind. It has been active on the map, but hasn't really found the big ganks. Now, Chapapi has it level 6, but execution available. Knight now with the Supreme Display of Talent as well, as dibu is making his way down top side. Don't expect that they can actually go for a gank. They just want to shove out the lane and I guess give Phoenix the opportunity to make his way back. Although they look to be moving down to river. First Drake will be a Mountain Drake, and we are not certain yet what the next one is going to be. Neither really making its way over to that first dragon, though. And thus far, it's been kind of a slow early game. Do you feel like that favors either team here, or is it pretty even, maybe outside of the Fiora and the top lane?
I think it is pretty even, and both teams are kind of waiting to see what the other team's first move will be. Usually you will see teams focusing towards that bot side of the map at the moment because the Rift Herald is not available yet. However, the first Dragon, the Mountain Drake, is up. So it's not a big surprise that we see Hadess going for a bot gank here. He gets spotted out by a ward. However, the bot lane by Sector 1 is pushed up quite far.
As Goose does go for it, does hit the root dab on top of Practice. He, or on top of Saviour, doesn't have the flash available, but uses it there to no avail. And that's a first successful gank coming out here after a nice practice play from Goose, who also used his heal just to make sure that that root hits. And that might mean priority here for DK on the Mountain Drake.
Yeah, nice gank found there by Hadess, walking up straight through the vision of Sector 1, and vision doesn't really matter when you're using all your spells on the enemy team and you're pushed underneath their turret. Of course, some of the spells used by the bot lane of DK as well to hit the CC on Sector 1, but they're going to be happy that they picked up First Blood on their Elise, which means that he gets a more favorable ahead in the matchup against Elise as well.
He finds the steal there and gets away scot-free. A beautiful play there from the jungler of Sector 1, and that's such a pivotal movement because it puts Sector 1 out of nowhere in the lead in terms of Drakes, and now that kill they gave up in the bot lane feels a little less bad.
And you can tell that DK wasn't expecting that at all because dibu wasn't spotted on that ward that's between the Dragon Pit and the Raptor camp in the jungle of Sector 1. And you don't really expect the Elise to just flash over the wall. Of course, he has the execute on his Q in spider form to combine it with the smite. However, Hadess has a similar execution move. Might making use of the mob. He's trying to set up a gank here in the bot lane.
Need to be respectful. Supreme Display of Plan is available. Knight goes in deep. Stealths away when he sees Hadess, doesn't want to go too aggressive here, and it looks like Sector 1 is just going to leave it at that. The minions are there to tank the turrets, and the dive doesn't work out, but Sector 1 doesn't really have to give anything up. Dibu standing on top of a ward and needs to be careful, is walking into the river now. Hadess is there, but Chapapi has been spotted, so they're all aware of the 4v4 scenario. Shuriken gets thrown, doesn't go in, and we see Alois roaming. He's just going to pick up jungle camps because this, of course, Alois we're talking about, and if you don't get jungle camps, how are you going to hit your 10 CR per minute on the Fiora here with the Tiamat? Phoenix, though, has been playing neutralizer in top lane, and thus far it's been going pretty well.
It's been going pretty well. He has picked up the Bramble Vest a while ago, has another cloth arrow, which will most likely go into those ninja tabbies. And that means that in the 1v1 scenario against the Fiora, you're going to be fine for at least the early game. And we see Alois itemizing as well for wave clear rather than effectively trading against Phoenix. Picked up the Tiamat so he can just clear wave after wave, picks up the Scuttle Crab, and I expect him to be picking up Golem camps from now on as well. Something that Alois just loves to do, and Hadess, well, seems to be fine with it as well. Being the Lee Sin doesn't really need to farm up as much because you know that Lee Sin as a champion will be falling off after the mid game anyway. At this point, Dragon is taken, was stolen beautifully by dibu, which means that we're going to see the bot lane swapping towards the top side because the next neutral objective that you need to be playing around is that Rift Herald. Nightmare's even using his ultimate there to get to top lane just a little bit quicker. Practice and Saviour, of course, are already there. Hadess also on this side of the map, but he's going to get found by dibu and Knight most likely.
I would like to reiterate the pressure that's on both of these two teams because playing against one of the teams that's basically from the same region as you is going to put a lot of pressure on it because there is, of course, a small rivalry. It's a friendly rivalry, but there's definitely a rivalry between the Belgian and the Dutch teams. As you see Practice get tagged there. There was priority here, a lead in Tampa for Sector 1, but they can't really utilize it as much as we now see the roam come through. Chapapi and Hadess around the mid lane. Practice has shoved up this lane, and these river skirmishes, it feels like this match is just slowly building up to a big explosion. And I feel like around one of these next objectives, we're going to see that skirmish that we've been waiting for. And then we're maybe going to get a better idea of how this match is actually going to go. Because thus far, both teams have been very respectful of one another, which is good for them. As Chapapi does go in on Knight there. Nice trade. Finds the proc of his fleet footwork. Knight does get tagged here. dibu also in the area, and they can't really go for anything. We'll pick up a plate, though, and that's a nice play coming out from the Akali that we haven't seen for so long here from Chapapi.
And Knight having a hard time in his mid lane because, of course, he picked up the early mobility boots, which, of course, don't give combat stats. Facing Chapapi, who has the arm guard and gets the early armor and ability power to get favorable trades against Knight. dibu waiting around the corner to see if Hadess would overstep with his Lee Sin. He's lucky enough to not do so. In the end, it's just DK picking up one turret plate. But if you go ahead and count up the turret plates, it's still Sector 1 who's taking down the most so far. Gold lead, however, still in the favor of the Defusekids, just 500 gold, 600 gold so far. And most of it is a result of the farm lead that's currently being built further in the bot lane by the Fiora. And the fact that they also picked up the first blood so far. Next bit of action will most likely occur either around the Rift Herald or around the Infernal Drake that's spawning in 30 seconds.
Low. Really nice Devour. That saved him from Moonlight Vigil as the Grafton damage that came out there. Not going to be enough here. And we now see them move back. And it does look like Practice is just using the Flamethrower. Just keep on pushing it. Keep the pressure on Goose and Nightmares, who are keeping up, but not really able to exert the pressure. And of course, Goose is going to skill fairly well. Had to burn his heal there as well. Maybe this is the opportunity that Second was looking for as they start the Rift Herald here. But at this point in time, not a lot DK can do after that proactive play from the bot lane of Sector 1. And that means that Rift Herald is going to go down. Now, my question is dibu going to drop it immediately for the plates? Looks like that is what he's planning to do. Will mean they give up Infernal Drake. And imagine if you get the Cloud Soul and Sector 1 here with Elise and Karma. That's not great.
Yeah, that isn't that good, really. However, they make the trade between giving up the Infernal Dragon. It will result in being an Ocean Rift in the end. So 1-1 Drake score so far. First start, however, will go down in favor of Sector 1, which means that they will take the gold lead here in this game. 14 minutes in.
Shelly's down.
Shelly does not manage to survive to get a second charge off.
Very sad.
Unfortunate, however, they will be happy with the fact that they picked up first turret. If we look at the state of the game, we see a couple of very farmed members so far. Practice pulling ahead of his counterpart in the bot lane. Of course, it's not Senna farming, but it's the Tahm Kench. But the gold leader, the CS lead is still 40 CS, which is significant at this point. Small CS lead for Fiora in the top lane, and in the mid lane we're quite even. However, Knight has invested in those early mobility boots, which so far have not really been paying off. However, it has given him some early map pressure, which is not something that we can express in gold, obviously.
Chapapi nearing full build. Once he has Gunblade, Akali becomes a very menacing champion. Now picked up the Umbral Glaive. It's going to make vision control around the map a little bit easier. We're even in Drakes. It is going to be the Ocean Soul, so no Cloud Soul shenanigans coming up here. And I think everyone watching in the teams, both of them, will be a little bit happier with that as well. Now, if we look at the state of the game, it's been very, very low tempo. And that is something that, considering these two team comps, I kind of expected more action, but it makes sense as well, because it's also two team comps that if one of your opponents gets ahead really far, it gets so hard to shut them down.
Yeah, and I think it's also two team comps who want to do different things and are playing their game plan so far accordingly. You have Sector 1 who drafted a bot lane in the form of the Aphelios and the Karma who want to push in the early game, and they've done just that. They have picked up 2 turrets so far, they've picked up a bunch of turret plates, and they have a very farmed Aphelios at this point. The Defusekids can sit back in the bot lane. They have the Senna, so you know you're going to get the scaling from Senna souls, which means that even if you fall behind in gold, you're going to get indirect gold value from the passive. And they have that Fiora late game win condition where nobody's most likely going to be able to match her in the side lane once she hit that 3.5 item point. Not even the Mordekaiser when he's itemizing towards mostly armor as he's doing, because obviously you're going to be facing the grand challenge, and that does quite a lot of true damage. So not a lot of action in the early game, but that is understandable when you look at the teams this way.
Now we see the push coming in here. Not really any flanking opportunities here. No wards. Sector 1 really playing it safe here, not allowing any Akali shenanigans to come through. As we see the first item spikes come through, there's a small lead here for Sector 1, which might mean that coming up the next fight expected to be the Drake, we're going to see them have a little bit of a lead. Knight there uses the Umbral Glaive to get some vision as he's building towards his second lethality item. And the Qiyana does mean that these jungle fights are a lot more stressful than they might otherwise be.
Yeah, jungle fights get quite awkward because you have to respect the Qiyana. Ultimately, you can't stand grouped at all. You can't really stand close to walls. However, jungle fights or fights in general are going to be quite awkward anyway, because you have an assassin on both sides, and both of these assassins have tools to stay invisible to the other team for a very long time. Knight with the Qiyana, of course, can get his elements from the brushes multiple times, and Chapapi can put down his Shroud as he's doing right here.
That's a really nice kick that coming through from Hayes, making sure that Dibu can't help his mid lane, and Knight not hitting the Supreme Dispel talent there, and is now making his way over there, finds another dash, goes stealth yet again. Does he have the damage to take down Chapapi? He's gonna delay the inevitable for just a little bit, but in the end, it's gonna be a double kill for the Akali, and that is something that back in the day when Chapapi find leads on these Akali, it never ended well. And we said, if you get an Akali in the side lane you can't deal with, and you also have a Fiora who's going to outskill pretty much everyone in the 1v1 scenario, Sector 1 in a bit of an awkward spot here with an overreach there on bot lane.
I remember the time from one of the previous Benelux leagues where Akali for Defusekids was pretty much either banned away for them or was first picked, and Chapapi usually popped off on that champion. And it looks like he hasn't really forgotten the tricks that he's learned so far, picking up a 2-0 score. And he has his core item in the form of that Gunblade as well. Has some safety with the Arm Guard. See, Alois going for a trade in the top lane. Phoenix might be in trouble.
And there is the grand challenge does come through in the Death Realm. Phoenix now staying alive through these of the songs. I think he's only delaying the inevitable. There we see a really nice parry coming through. Now, Alois does not get hit, and it's going to be a summon of force and a great trade there. Practice needs to be careful. Chapapi is on top of him. Moonlight's Villa get used. Look up Practice staying alive for a really long time. Can he actually get it? Practice on the Aphelios, an absolute monster. Able to weave through the Akali. Doesn't get taken down by perfect execution. And Sector 1 find a favorable skirmish there.
Yeah, skirmishing against an Aphelios who has the Crescendum and has the Flamethrower is just something that you really don't want to do. See Practice standing on top of Hades for the better part of that fight. Results in a 1-for-0 trade, and it also means that the third dragon of the game will most likely be the second dragon going towards Sector 1, who will be happy with the fact that they pick up this Ocean Drake and get one step closer towards that Ocean Soul. It won't be as early as we've seen in previous matches because, of course, DK has managed to pick up a dragon as well, but it's a nice something anyway. For now, teams going for slow resets. No objective to take left on the map except for Baron, who will be spawning in 30 seconds. However, that's usually not an objective you want to go for unless one or more members of the enemy team are dead at this point. Defusekids going for the 1-3-1 matchup or lane 1-3-1 lanes as we predicted, and I think Sector 1 is going to be happy to match that so far.
And Phoenix yet again this time stays alive for a little bit longer, but can't do too much. And this matchup, even with the amount of fences, that is not great. But can the punish come through here from Sector 1? They do have a lot of roaming power. Alois has to respect here. Goes on top as the teleport from Chapapi comes through. As we see Nightmares making his way over as well. That's the first blow up there on Dibu. Can't do anything about that. They go very deep on Practice and will pick him up in the end. Supreme Display of Talent is too little, too late. And this skirmish is a triple kill for Chapapi. And I think he thought, you know, guys, I haven't shown this side of myself in a while. Let's show them how it's really done, as Qiyana has been unable to really make his mark, and the Fuses are going to leverage this into a Baron right away.
Perfect execution for the Akali, living up to its name. See Chapapi picking up 2.5k gold lead. It's a 4-4-0 team fight, and Alois has his teleport available, which means that they will be starting off this Baron. Knight doesn't look like he's going to be able to contest, which is going to slingshot DK into the lead at only 20 minutes into the game. Can they make use of this Baron buff effectively to push down structures, because they haven't killed as many turrets so far? But right now it's looking very good to the Defusekids, who are looking towards both the Akali and Fiora to carry this game.
What I think is really interesting here is that Sector 1, it feels like they should have more kills than they do, because they've had a lot of pressure, they have these aggressive plays, there were multiple skirmishes around the map, they're able to pick up objectives, but when it comes to actually delivering on those skills, to actually turning them into something valuable and actually getting them into the Death Realm, it doesn't work. The Defusekids has been playing so well within their limits. The only one dying is Hades in this single underestimation of 200 years of Riot game design, and that means that Sector 1 now is facing a bigger and bigger lead coming out from the Defusekids. Now, the Defusekids aren't going to be able to break open the base, so this game definitely not fought. But I gotta say, if I look at a 5-0 Akali on the opposite side, I wonder how much space Practice is going to have to actually play the game. And if your Aphelios can't do a lot, it's going to be, I guess, up to Phoenix to try and keep Chapapi away from his carry. But then who deals with Alois, who, unsurprisingly, is surpassing 10 CS per minute, now has a Triforce and a Ravenous Hydra, and is going to start knocking on the doors of your inhibitor.
Yeah, this is something that DK really shouldn't be able to get away with at this point. We see Defusekids really taking away their own pressure in the mid lane because they know that Alois is doing something in the side lane, which this usually means that Sector 1 should be able to collapse on Alois. He does, however, pick up that top lane inner turret and then gets off the recall because he has such a speedy one with the Baron buff right now. So another turret going towards Defusekids, who gets the cocoon on the Lee Sin. However, there's a Tahm Kench right next to him, and with the Devour, Lee Sin is going to be perfectly fine. Alois made his way over towards the bot lane and is going to be looking to push down turrets there as well, further building on the gold lead that Defusekids already has.
Nightmare's playing Hungry Hippo. They're keeping the rest of his team safe. This time, Kench, of course, excelling at that, building towards the Gargoyle Stone Blades to be even healthier. And Sector, I feel like they need to win one of these skirmishes sometime soon because the madness that is Alois is a big enough problem in of itself. If you are in a good game state outside of that, but you're not. Chapapi is incredibly fat, and Goose is just going to skill freely. And that means that you need to play so incredibly carefully. You don't have a Tahm Kench. You don't really have anyone who can keep practice safe outside of the Karma Shields or Phoenix, who plays defensively, but then you need to play those skirmishes incredibly crisp. We see the back coming through here from Chapapi, Baron recalls coming through here now from DK, 40 seconds left on the clock for this Drake, which if Sector 1 can somehow pick it up, a Debu can find the steal again as they start to take prior on mid lane, does mean that they will be at soul point.
Defusekids going for a very safe option there rather than overreaching and trying to push down either the mid outer turret or the bot lane inner turret. They go for an early reset to make sure that they can get in range of this dragon before it spawns. Still 15 seconds on the clock, and now they're in the mid lane with 4 champions picking up priority there. Alois is in the top lane, doesn't have teleport available. If Sector 1 knows that, they might be looking for a fight right here.
And they should if they kept track of the time, as we now see Phoenix making his way, but I feel like this is just going to be a 4v4 scenario. Baron buff has now timed out. Phoenix should be able, and there they go, the instant delete on top of Hadess. Now Debu also taken low though, and Supreme Display of Time was used. That's a really big team fight ultimate gone, but I think that might mean that Sector 1 can put themselves on soul point here, with Phoenix defending, keeping Alois at bay. Sector 1 shows that they are still very much in this game, and Hadess now 100% of the deaths. Not a great look, although to be fair, it's still only see Phoenix using the Death Realm offensively there, making it a little bit harder for Alois to know what's going on outside of the map. Maybe looking for a possible collapse, but Phoenix needs to be really careful there.
In the end, it's Sector 1 finding the kill, using that man advantage to pick up the dragon, putting them at soul point in 4.5 minutes. Phoenix managing to fend Alois off of their top lane inhibitor turret. It did, however, take quite a severe beating, having about 1/3 of its HP left, which means that the next defense by Phoenix might not be as successful. This does, however, put the Defusekids on a clock, and they really do have to defend or fight for the next dragon, because you really do not want to give up the Ocean Soul in a game like this, where you know that team fights are going to be messy, are going to be stretched out, and that those are exactly the kind of skirmishes where the Ocean Soul can come in clutch, providing that extra healing, providing that extra mana regen for a lot of these champions. And the Ocean Soul in general is just very obnoxious to be playing against. Defusekids still not going for this mid lane outer turret. They do really need Goose with his Senna there to be actually to be able to poke it down, because of course Goose being the only ranged champion on that team, you don't want to be walking up with melee champions at this point, especially not against the Qiyana or champions like the Elise.
Knight making his way over together with Debu. It's just Alois. We've seen this gone terribly wrong, as there the grand challenge is issued. Alois is forced to flash. Knight trades his supreme display of talent. That's going to be the end of that play, alleviating a little bit of pressure on Phoenix. Alois has hit level 16 here. And I wanted to ask you, like, how are these skirmishes going to be? But I see so many opportunities, because these team fights will be so incredibly volatile, because there is so much damage on both sides and really not a lot of tankiness.
Yeah, there's exactly that, actually. There's a lot of damage, there's a lot of scaling damage as well, and the only frontliner for Sector 1 is that Mordekaiser, who so far has only built Zhonya's as kind of like a defensive item, and on the side of DK we have the Tahm Kench. It's just the Alois and Phoenix in another Death Realm. Alois getting chunked, but he does have the Conqueror.
He's really just trying to... Phoenix is just really using the Death Realm whenever he feels like, just to kind of keep Alois at bay, because I think the key point here is that once that's used, Alois's vision is effectively reliant on his teammates, which makes communicating a lot harder. It's like with the paranoia from Nocturne, right? So then he needs to play really respectful. Phoenix is just stalling for time, having faith in the rest of his team. As we see Chapapi and Knight, that's not a matchup I think Knight is going to be very happy with until he maybe picks up something like an Edge of Night or a Hex Drinker. Not happening as of yet, though. So we will maybe not having another fight as we see some Bath Brush being set up there. While Alois is proxying waves and Phoenix is just desperately trying to keep his turret alive. Alois poking left and right.
Sector 1 has the pressure on them right now. Phoenix getting dived in the bot lane, doesn't have Zhonya's available. It's going to be a solo killer. Flashes away won't be enough, which means that Sector 1 has to do something here. Otherwise, Alois is going to be taking that turret for free right now. We see Knight roaming over towards the bot lane, which means that the Defusekids will have a man advantage in the mid lane. They do, however, have some issues finding a gank.
Nice has Mobies. It's going to go after Alois. This is a 1v1 that he needs to execute well if he doesn't want to get blown up. There goes the sprint display of talent. Ignite gets thrown down. And that is a big shutdown. Doesn't even need to knock them into the wall. And it's a 1-for-1 trade in the end. Alois doing a lot of damage there, but also getting a little bit overzealous. Now, can Sector 1 actually turn this into something else? In 1 minute 20, the next Drake spawns. And you gotta bet that they want to play for Ocean Soul. Goose gets tagged, but with the Tahm Kench there, and not that much there you can go for. Alois now hitting 3 items. And this game is, even though there's not that much action, there's so much going on.
There is a lot going on. Next pivotal point will be the fact that Dragon is spawning in a minute. It can be soul point for Sector 1 if they manage to pick up, but they, however, do decide to go for the Baron first. There is a ward in the pit for the Defusekids, so they know what's going on. They also have 3 teleports to get here very quickly. Phoenix also teleporting in. Hadess is there as well. It feels like a coin flip right here.
Yeah, that's a really big coin flip. A Goose making his way over, but look at how fast this Baron goes down. There's a lot of damage coming through. Chapapi now makes his way, goes in with the Shuriken, perfect execution. Is able to stall for a lot of time. Practice gets taken really low. Perfect execution is enough, but it's a 1-for-1 trade. As for now, there comes Alois in the backline, finds 9, and that's a grand challenge that's not even necessary. Phoenix now on his own. He can stay alive for a little bit longer with the use of Zonya, but I don't think he's going to pick up anyone else. Hadess gets taken low, but it's not nearly enough. And in the end, it's a favorable team fight, and Sector 1 get punished for being so greedy with the Baron.
Can Sector 1 take away the Dragon right now? Because you know that DK's DPS on the Baron isn't that high.
They can.
You see Dibu and Saviour beelining over towards the Drake. DK knows it. They're sending at least Alois over towards the Drake to make sure that Sector 1 can't take it away uncontested. They do have Nightmares' teleport and his ultimate to move over towards the Drake as well.
Don't know if they can send him away. Alois now going in 1v2. Is he actually confident in this? It looks like he is. Alois is not scared for anyone. He's just going in 1v2. Finds the parry single-handedly with teleport now coming in from Chapapi. Secures a chance for the Defusekids to pick up that Ocean Drake themselves. Most important, deny that Ocean Soul from Sector 1, which would be the one silver lining. Instead, Sector 1 just needs to accept that it's DK who's taking complete control of this game. And this is what we talked about practice. Can he really play the game with how fat Chapapi is?
I mean, I feel like that just was a very poor call from Sector 1 to actually go for the Baron. Looking at the summoner spells that DK has, you have the Tahm Kench ultimate to be very mobile across the map, and next to that you also have 3 summoner spell teleports to get to neutral objectives very quickly. And as far as I could see, at least 2 of those were available. So Sector 1 kind of being caught out right there with Baron at 3000 HP results in a favorable fight for DK, who do not only pick up the Baron, second Baron of the game, but they pick up the Dragon as well, which means that Sector 1 has to wait another 4 minutes to be able to go for that Ocean Soul. And I'm not quite sure if that's time that Sector 1 has, because they are on a clock. Fiora so far has picked up 3.5 items looking to build towards that Guardian Angel. And once she picks up that 4th item, she might become quite unstoppable. I don't think that Phoenix can match Alois in the side lane right now. Just looking to see how much pressure Defusekids is going to put on this mid lane turret. We see Chapapi in the side lane. He's very fat on the Akali as well. I don't think that Qiyana is going to be able to match her either. This means that Defusekids has a 1-3-1 setup where both of their side lanes are stronger than their counterpart. Now they just need to play it correctly.
Hadess also looking for the flank. It's practice all or nothing. Sector 1 has been in this position before, but this time their side lanes are going to be in such a rough situation. There's no vision for them as Chapapi is making his way over to this objective. Hadess now shadowing his mid laner. And Chapapi really having a redemption game on the Akali. It's something that we haven't seen in a long time, but it's proven so effective here. Meanwhile, I don't think you can really protect the Spirit Phoenix, and he seems to be of the same Conclusion is going to back off there for a little bit.
Teleport
Although
bot.
we do see the teleport coming through here. Phoenix tries to keep himself alive for a little bit longer, and with practice there, you need to respect that Aphelios. He moves forward, doesn't hit the Q, and there comes Hadess yet again, looking for the crucial kick, because one Dragon Rage can end the game immediately, because if you lose the next fight of Sector 1 with the state of the game, you're just going to give up the first game in this best of 3, which would mean the Battle of the Benelux would be up 1-0 for the Defusekids. Now, 32 minutes into the game, we see a solid gold lead here in Sector 1. Need to find a miracle fight if they want to come back from. They've done it already, this EUM, and with the amount of damage available, I still feel like DK, also with how they're playing, also know that this isn't won yet.
It's most definitely not one that, and Sector 1 isn't even out of this game so far. However, if we look at the facts, we see that DK is up in kills, up 7k in gold, and the only way for Sector 1 to really get back in this game is to either get a miracle steal off on an important objective or go for that Ocean Soul, which will be available in 2 minutes. However, if it's up to Defusekids, Sector 1 won't be able to get away with it. Practice on that Aphelios has picked up 3 items so far. It's looking to pick up the Bloodthirster next, and from that point on, it's kind of the question who can output the most damage in team fights. We see that Defusekids has very strong side lanes, and this also shows in the gold graph. Alois 6k gold up on the Mordekaiser.
They knock in Dibu, but he can stay alive for a little bit longer. Spring display of talent doesn't really find its impact as Chapapi goes in very deep. 2 kills given over for absolutely nothing here. And Alois now has started to chase down Practice, doing his very best to say, oh, look at that burst coming through. Now Practice is forced to kite back into the team of the Defusekids, and I think that's going to be it. All of a sudden, Sector 1 overextends Hadess, who starts there, the crucial pick, immediate follow-up from Chapapi, and with the death time, that's going to be the end of this first game. Coming through here, Sector 1, they gave it their all, they tried to go for more proactive game style, but in the end, it's the Defusekids who are going to be looking to go up 1-0 here in this best of 3.
A very calculated win from the Defusekids here in just over 34 minutes. Death timer's too long for the side of Sector 1, so we're looking indeed at the Defusekids will go up 1-0 in this series. It's not like Sector 1 didn't put up a fight, but in the end, we see the Defusekids punishing the mistakes that Sector 1 made really hard. Every single macro mistake, even though there were very few that Sector 1 made, get punished so immensely, which does result in 2 Barons going towards the side of the Defusekids, which does mean that Sector 1 does not get to pick up their 4th Drake for the Ocean Soul, and which ultimately does lead for a victory for the Defusekids.
It's a convincing win from the Defusekids, but Sector 1 is showing some signs of life. Can they drag it back from here, or is it going to be a 2-0 for the Dutch League representatives here? And are we going to yet again see the Defusekids represent the Benelux in the main stage of the EU Masters? We're going to go to a short break, and then we'll be back with you guys to see who's going to take this